Among my circle of friends, I have a rather notorious hate boner for the standard fantasy setting. Like, the second you start getting orcs and dragons involved is the second I have to mentally unclip myself from reality to keep from dying of boredom. So the only media I really like from that genre these days are things that break those molds and have interesting and unique ideas. Things like Konosuba, or more to the point, like Dark Souls. Sure, Dark Souls has dragons and undead and shit, but the setting, and more specifically, the atmosphere and the tone, was like nothing I had ever seen before when I first played it. The game is famous for its uncaring world, almost devoid of life, and yet weirdly beautiful in its own way. A land of ancient heroes who by now have all died or gone insane, and where having hope is pointless. And all that is reflected beautifully in the gameplay, how you have to unlearn how typical third-person action games work or die. And you will die. You'll die and you'll die again and again and again. And maybe once in a while you'll accomplish something and get a brief sense of victory, but it will be inevitably replaced by yet more suffering. And all of that was so new to me back then. I had never seen anything like it. And the sense of wonder that I experienced acted almost like a coat of polish across the entire game. Like, in my mind, it glossed over so many of the flaws that Dark Souls had. But sadly, wonder is a transient thing. It fades quickly, never to be seen or felt again. So by the time that Dark Souls 2 and 3 had come around, I had sorta gotten used to the atmosphere of a Dark Souls game and how they worked. So, good or bad, in my mind, those two games didn't have the benefit of that gloss, and didn't resonate with me anywhere near as much. Which brings us to Hollow Knight, a 2D Metroidvania game that just recently recaptured those feelings in me. In Hollow Knight, you play a small little beetle boy descending into the depths of a ruined kingdom, and you must explore what remains while along the way, getting stronger and beating bosses. So, all of that is fairly standard Metroidvania fare, but I didn't make that earlier Dark Souls comparison idly, because Hollow Knight was able to constantly remind me of Dark Souls, despite extensively being its own thing. There are obvious surface-level comparisons that make that connection, like how money is lost upon death or the NPCs you meet along the way, but I'm more talking about the world. Hollow Knight has a lot in common with the world design of Dark Souls, how there's this darkness that hangs over everything, and how the story is told mostly through the environmental design. But at the same time, the world of Hollow Knight isn't nearly as depressive as Dark Souls was. It has a levity about it, small as it may be, that's afforded to it by the fucking incredible hand-drawn aesthetic and backgrounds. Like, sure, the world is dark and full of dangers, but that doesn't mean you can't find beauty or people who are still happy. Really, the art is probably one of my favorite things about this game. There were so many times where I just had to stop dead in my tracks and say aloud, "Fuck, this game's pretty." And more than just being gorgeously drawn, the world of Hollow Knight is also an incredibly interesting and unique place to explore. Like I said earlier, I hate the standard fantasy setting, and whereas Dark Souls improved upon it by adding interesting themes and gameplay elements, Hollow Knight's world is a creation all its own. Everyone you meet in the world of Hollow Knight is an incredibly cute bug. The sword you fight with is a repurposed nail, and everything is located underground in a manner reminiscent of the inner workings of an anthill. It's all so many ways removed from dragons and undead, and that gives everything an unfamiliarity to it that greatly helps the sense of exploration. Like, hey, I'm playing Skyrim, I wonder what'll be over that hill. Well, the answer is probably a small village or a castle or a dungeon or some shit. Or, hey, I'm playing Hollow Knight, I wonder what'll be in the next room. I've got no fucking clue, it could be literally anything. And I'm excited to go over there and find out what it is. Like I said, a familiarity with what Dark Souls was and how it operated was what eventually killed my investment in the franchise. So the world of Hollow Knight being so unique and alien is the main thing that really helps in bringing those feelings back. Of course, I assume that at least a part of the wanderlust that I felt playing the game comes from the fact that I'm also relatively green to the genre. I've been playing through AM2R recently in an attempt to remedy that issue, but beyond that, I've never played a Castlevania or Axiom Verge or Metroid Prime or any of the big genre staples really. So the unique setting, incredible art, subtle storytelling, and charm of the game probably would have been enough by themselves, but add on top of all of that I've not yet gotten used to how the genre works, and it was really the perfect recipe for recreating those feelings that Dark Souls gave me. The magic of Dark Souls wasn't just in the world, it's also because it was so unlike anything most people had ever played. Unfamiliarity with the world or with the game systems is really what breeds that grand feeling of wonder, and Hollow Knight gave me both in spades. Of course, that won't work for everyone. Like, maybe you're a seasoned veteran of the Metroidvania genre, or maybe you're not as into the world that Hollow Knight's created, but I most certainly was. And that's why Hollow Knight is one of the most fascinating and, dare I say, wonderful games that I've played in a long, long time. Hey guys, thank you so much for watching. But before I go, a quick question I want to ask. So, people who have played Metroidvania games a lot, what do you think of enemies hurting you when you touch them, in addition to the normal attacks that they have? I don't know, it seems kinda bullshit to me because the game gives me a sword, a melee weapon mind you, so you have to get really close to the enemies to hit them, but not really close because then we'll punish you for doing that. Like, at least in Metroid you had a gun, you know? But like I said, I am new to the Metroidvania genre, so maybe I'm just an idiot, it's quite likely. Feel free to tell me what you think of that either in the comments or in my shiny new Discord server, linked in the description below. Also, I want to give special thanks to some of my wonderful Patreon patrons, like Isaiah Christo, Sawsbucky, Forgotten Paladin, Killy, Ludwig, Mageline, Mythnut, Dexter Atmos, GI09, and an account that I made to donate to myself to pretend I have more fans, for all their fantastic support. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you guys next time. Later.